This week, I want to start somewhere the essay couldn't. I've been noticing something in how I'm using AI that I haven't said on this platform yet. The kind of work I normally do entirely in my own head, the social calibration, reading the room I just left, drafting what I'm about to walk into, trying to figure out which interpretations other people might land on when I can only see the one my neurology presents to me first. That work, the work I usually do alone in my head, I've been routing through Claude. Not because I needed an answer, because I needed to see what interpretations were on the table that don't occur to me naturally. The answer doesn't have to be perfect. That's not how social actually works. But seeing the options I wouldn't have considered lets me actually bring the EQ skills I do have to the surface. The part of emotional intelligence that requires a social interpretation step doesn't have to come from inside me anymore. It can come from the routing. The cognitive load this week is the lowest it has been in years. I'm telling you this because the essay this week is about exactly that, an organizational scale. And I want to start where I actually felt it, at my own desk, with my own social processing, with a system that did not exist last year. Now doing the routing work I used to do entirely in my head. That's the first concrete thing this moment is selecting for. So here's the framing. There's a question leadership is still asking. There's another question the workforce has already answered. The gap between them is what this essay is about. The question leadership is still asking is, should we adopt AI? Should we govern it? Should we train people on it? Should we set policies? The question the workforce already answered is yes, we did. We just didn't tell you. You see it in the data. Microsoft's 2026 Work Trend Index, published this month, May 2026, found that nearly half of all co-pilot conversations inside organizations are doing cognitive work, not formatting, not scheduling, cognitive work, analyzing information, evaluating trade-offs, solving problems, thinking. 2 years before that, the same report named 78% of AI users as bringing their own AI to work, outside organizational governance. We call that shadow AI. Now, it's the architecture nearly every desk runs. The intervening 2 years did not reverse that pattern. They normalized it. I want to be precise about the data scope because the trajectory matters more than the receipt. This is the population Microsoft is measuring. Organizations where AI has reached the desk, where the tools are in front of the workforce, where the routing decision is something a person can make in real time. There are workforces upstream of that point, sectors where AI hasn't reached the desk yet, roles where the routing hasn't happened. Those workforces are not exempt from the architectural question. They inherit it on a delay, and the delay is closing. But for the orgs Microsoft is measuring, and for the desks where Copilot and Claude and a dozen other tools are sitting in front of the workforce right now, the workforce has already made the routing decision operating model was supposed to make. What the workforce did with the time it bought was offload the quadrant 4 work, the drafting, the summarizing, the scheduling, the reformatting, the follow-up, the work that was already costing more than it was visible for. AI offered an exit. Workforce took it. Here's the part most leadership conversations are missing. Adoption isn't the problem. Invisibility of the adoption is. If your organization is having an adoption debate right now, the people inside your organization are already settled. They didn't ask. They didn't wait. They made the decision. So adoption is really answered. It's already answered. What's the question that's actually left? It's the architectural one. What cognitive architecture does an organization run once execution is no longer the human's job? These are not the same question. They live at different altitudes. The adoption question asks, should we use AI? Its tools are governance, policy, training. It treats the human contribution as the constant, the variable as the technology. It's a question about whether to bring the tool inside the building. Architectural question asks, what's left for humans to do once execution is no longer ours? Its tools are routing, judgment composition, deliberate design. It treats the human contribution as the variable being redefined. Technology is the constant. The technology is here. The question is what to do with the human side of the equation. Let me say that differently. Adoption is a technology question. Architecture is an organizational design question. The adoption question buys time. The architectural one designs survivor. The previous essay in this arc named this at the individual level. People were treating burnout as a wellness problem when the structural answer was design. Rest doesn't solve a routing error. You can step away for 2 weeks and come back to the same architecture and be depleted within days. The architecture is doing the depletion. The work that's needed is a redesign, not a recovery. The same diagnosis is now operating at the organizational level. Adoption, the tool conversation, is the wellness response. Architecture, the design conversation, is the structural answer. Here's where it gets interesting. The operating model most organizations run today was designed to standardize judgment so execution could run predictably at scale. That was the right design for the era it was built in. For about a century, that design produced the prosperity of the industrial era. It worked. Execution was the surface where the design ran. The standardization happened underneath. But you could only see the surface. Deliverables, the meetings, the outputs, the performance reviews. When execution leaves the room, what's left visible is the design choice underneath. And the design choice is judgment was standardized at the individual level. Cognitive variance was minimized so the deliverable could be predictable. 3 things in your organization right now are the artifacts of that design choice. They were already in plain view. They only become legible once the work they were organized around is gone. 1. The org chart. It's a routing diagram for execution. It tells you who delivers. It does not tell you who decides. Once delivery is AI shaped, the chart shows nothing useful about the judgment topology of the organization. And the judgment topology is now the operating system. 2. Performance reviews. They measure execution outputs. They have no framework for measuring judgment composition. The assembly of frames, the routing of attention, the work that stays after AI has done the drafting. A review that grades a deliverable grades nothing once a deliverable was AI assisted. The review measured the surface. The judgment composing it was the value. 3. Leadership criteria. We reward fluency in the meeting, real-time verbal performance, presence, the kind of executive bearing that produces the deliverable while the room watches. Once the deliverable composes itself off meeting, the criteria measure where the surface used to land. Fluency in the room was a proxy for judgment. The judgment moved off page. The proxy stayed. Now, let me say what happens when you don't redesign. Most organizations are not designing a cognitive architecture. They are running the industrial one with AI bolted on. The bolt-on is the failure mode. The cornerstone essay of this arc named this binary directly. Every organization is now operating a cognitive architecture, whether deliberately designed or inherited from a different era. The inherited one was built around execution. Execution is leaving. Architecture stays. Now, governing work it was never built for. And here's the thing most workforce conversations miss. This isn't a workforce problem. It's full stack. A SAP-sponsored survey of 300 C-suite executives at companies over $1 billion in revenue found 74% of those executives trust AI inputs more than advice from colleagues, family, or friends. Nearly half would let AI override a decision they had already made. Let me say that again. Nearly half of C-suite executives at billion-dollar companies would let AI override a decision they already made. The numbers measure the absence of a frame for weighing AI output against human judgment, not at one layer of the organization, at every layer. The workforce routes around organizational governance through shadow AI. Leadership defaults to AI inputs over colleague advice. Both ends of the org are doing the same thing for the same structural reason. Neither has a frame for routing the decision between human judgment and AI output. When the architecture is undesigned, fluency wins. And this isn't just me making this argument. Solver Sheedy has been making the same point that what matters going forward is judgment, not the technology. So have a number of other voices from different starting points: data leadership, AI strategy, organizational design, workforce research. When multiple people land on the same place independently, that's not coincidence. That's convergence. The convergence is around one claim: AI is the constant now. The variable is human judgment. Every quarter, the inheritance continues. The gap widens. Deliberate design organizations route quadrant 2 work to free quadrant 2 capacity. Bolt on organizations route quadrant 4 work to a more depleted quadrant 2 layer. Quadrant 4 was duplicated through shadow AI the org cannot see, not offloaded. Inherited architecture plus AI scale plus AI on design judgment fails exponentially. Let me name the time horizon because it's not what most leaders assume. Inflection is not a single moment, it is moving in layers on different clocks. The first layer is execution leaving the organization. That's the layer I just described. Microsoft 2026, SAP 300 executives, shadow AI. The second layer is now visible outside the organization. A New York Times opinion column on May 11, 2026 reported what households are doing with AI. The chores, the scheduling, the drafting, the same Q4 work, quadrant 4, the office never named as work. Execution did not leave the organization and stop. It left, entered the home, and is now disrupting the small businesses caught between the two surfaces. The third layer is what the cornerstone covered in enterprise term: physical AI moving into transportation, healthcare, logistics, manufacturing. What's now visible is the same displacement reaching past the org boundary into household and small business work, the surfaces that connect organizational execution to everything outside it: robotics, embodied agents, the next surface. The clocks are not a forecast, they're the deadline. 3 layers in motion, each on its own clock. The inherited architecture is being asked to govern all 3 simultaneously. It was built for none of them. So, what does survival look like? The choice every organization now faces is whether to design the architecture deliberately or continue running the inherited one. The inherited one fails at AI enabled scale because its assumptions, execution as the human contribution, fluency as the proxy for judgment, the room as the unit of work, don't hold anymore. Adoption bought time. Architecture designed survival. Most organizations are still answering the first. Let me come back to where I started, the lived case. Because what survival looks like at the individual level is exactly what it's going to look like at the organizational level. What I noticed this past week is that running my social calibration through AI didn't make me worse at being a human. It made me better at it. Because the part of emotional intelligence I run manually, the social interpretation, the seeing of what's behind what someone said, that's been the cognitive load tax I've been paying for 15 years. Emotional intuition and emotional intelligence are not the same thing. We conflate them. Emotional intuition is the automatic part, the read happening below the level of conscious thought. Emotional intelligence is the work that follows from the read, the calibration, the response, the action. I have the intelligence. I run the intuition manually. When AI handles the option generation step for the intuition, the intelligence I do have actually shows up in the room instead of being eaten by upstream cost. The same logic operates at the strategic layer. Articulating my thinking on complex topics in a way that's legible to other senior leaders used to require an additional translation layer on top of the thinking itself. When I route that translation work through AI, the thinking is what's left for me to do, the actual thinking, the thing I'm good at. This is what running a deliberate cognitive architecture looks like at the individual scale. The cognitive load is the lowest it has been in years. Not because I'm doing less, because the routing finally matches the architecture. This is what survival at scale will look like for organizations. Not less work, the right work, routed to the right place. Let me close on what I want you to sit with this week. 3 threads. 1. The deadline, not the metaphor. The structural fact that 3 layers are in motion simultaneously, and the architecture being asked to govern all 3 was built for none of them. 2. The narrower question. Most leadership rooms are still asking, should we adopt AI? The workforce already answered. The question that's left is what cognitive architecture you're running once adoption is no longer the question. If you're asking the narrower one, you're already inside the answer to the larger one. You just haven't seen it that way yet. 3. The variable. The compare table in the essay names the inversion. The adoption question treats the human contribution as the constant and the technology as the variable. The architectural question inverts it. AI is the constant now. It's here. It's at the desk. The variable is the human side of the equation. What judgment, what cognitive variance, what composition of frames you bring to the moment that AI does not. If you're a leader, sit with that inversion. The variable is not which AI to adopt. The variable is the human value that remains when AI is the constant. The next essay in this arc is the lived proof that the design problem is solvable. The cognitive architecture this moment selects for is the one some operators have been running the whole time, long before AI made cognition's architecture legible. The one writing this is one of them, one speaking right now. That's where we'll be next week. Until then, design the architecture.